My name is Emily. I am 28 years old. This is my story. It is a story about love, pain, and forgiveness. It is not an easy story to tell, but I need to tell it. I met David when I was 23 years old. I was working in a small coffee shop in the city. He came in every morning at 8 o'clock. He always ordered the same thing, black coffee and a blueberry muffin. He had beautiful brown eyes and a kind smile. Every day he said good morning to me. Every day, I felt my heart beat faster. One morning, it was raining very hard. David came into the shop, and his clothes were all wet. I gave him his coffee and said, "You should buy an umbrella." He laughed and said, "I always forget. Maybe you can remind me tomorrow." That was how we started talking. Every day we talked a little more. After 2 weeks, he asked me to have dinner with him. I said yes immediately. Our first date was magical. We went to a small Italian restaurant. We talked for 4 hours. He told me about his job as a teacher. I told him about my dreams of becoming a writer. We laughed together. We shared our stories. When he walked me home that night, I knew something special was beginning. David and I fell in love quickly. Every day with him felt like a gift. He was gentle and caring. He listened when I spoke. He made me laugh when I was sad. After 6 months, I met his parents. I was very nervous that day. I wanted them to like me. David said, "Don't worry. They will love you." But I was still afraid. We drove to their big house outside the city. It was a beautiful house with a large garden and tall trees. David's mother, Margaret, opened the door. She looked at me from head to toe. She did not smile. She said, "So you are Emily." Her voice was cold. My heart sank. David's father, Robert, was sitting in the living room. He shook my hand but did not look at me. He just asked David about work and the weather. During dinner, I tried to be polite and friendly. I asked them questions about their lives. Margaret gave short answers. Robert barely spoke to me. They talked to David as if I was not there. I felt invisible. I felt small. After dinner, I heard them talking in the kitchen. I was in the bathroom, and their voices came through the wall. Margaret said, "She is not right for you, David. She works in a coffee shop. She has no education. You can do much better." My eyes filled with tears. David's voice answered, "Mom, I love her. That's what matters." But his mother said, "Love is not enough. You need someone from a good family, someone with a future." I came out of the bathroom with red eyes. David saw my face and knew something was wrong. On the drive home, I told him what I heard. He was angry. He said, "Don't listen to them, Emily. Their opinion doesn't matter. I love you and that is enough." He held my hand tightly. But deep inside, I felt the pain of rejection. The months passed. David and I grew closer, but his parents grew colder. They never called me. They never invited me to family events. When David visited them, they asked him to come alone. It hurt me every time. I asked David, "Why don't they like me?" He said, "They are old-fashioned. They will change. Give them time." After 2 years together, David proposed to me. It was a beautiful spring evening. We were walking in the park near the river. The sun was setting, and the sky was pink and orange. David got down on one knee and took out a small box. He said, "Emily, you are my best friend, my love, my everything. Will you marry me?" Tears of joy ran down my face. I said yes. We were so happy. We started planning our wedding. But when David told his parents, they did not congratulate us. Margaret said, "Are you sure about this, David?" Robert said nothing. They did not offer to help with the wedding. They did not ask about the date. It felt like they were pretending it was not happening. My parents were different. They were not rich, but they were loving and warm. My mother hugged David and cried with happiness. My father shook his hand and said, "Welcome to our family, son." They helped us plan everything. They gave us money for the wedding even though they did not have much. I felt grateful for them, but I felt sad about David's parents. 2 months before the wedding, something terrible happened. David's parents called him and said they would not come to the wedding. Margaret said, "We cannot support this marriage. If you marry her, you are making a big mistake." David was devastated. He begged them to change their minds, but they refused. I saw David cry that night. He was a strong man, but his parents' rejection broke his heart. I held him and said, "We don't need them there. We have each other." But inside, I felt a deep anger growing. How could they hurt their own son like this? How could they be so cruel? We got married on a beautiful June day. The ceremony was small and simple. My family was there. Our friends were there. But David's side of the room was empty. When David said his vows, his voice shook. I knew he was thinking about his parents. I felt angry again. This should have been the happiest day of our lives, but there was a shadow over it. After the wedding, we tried to build our life together. We rented a small apartment. I started taking online classes to become a writer. David continued teaching. We were happy together, but the pain of his parents' rejection never went away completely. 1 year after our wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. We were overjoyed. David cried when I showed him the test. He said, "We're going to be parents." We hugged and danced around the apartment. This baby was our dream coming true. David wanted to tell his parents about the baby. I was against it. I said, "They don't care about us. Why should we tell them?" But David said, "This is their grandchild. They have a right to know." He called them that same day. I heard his conversation. Margaret's voice was cold even through the phone. She said, "That's nice, David," as if he was telling her about the weather. Robert said nothing. They did not ask about my health. They did not ask when the baby was due. They did not offer any support. David's face fell. After he hung up, he sat on the couch and stared at the wall. I sat next to him and held his hand, but I felt the anger inside me grow stronger. My pregnancy was difficult. I was sick every morning. I was tired all the time. My mother came to help me. She cooked for us and cleaned our apartment. She took me to doctor appointments when David was at work. My father built a crib for the baby with his own hands. My family gave us love and support. David's parents sent nothing. They did not call. They did not visit. It was as if we did not exist. In my 7th month of pregnancy, I had a serious problem. I started bleeding one night. David rushed me to the hospital. I was terrified. I thought I was losing the baby. The doctors said I needed to rest completely. They said the baby was in danger. David called his mother from the hospital and told her what was happening. I heard him say, "Mom, Emily is in the hospital. The baby might not survive." There was silence. Then Margaret said, "I hope everything works out," and hung up. I could not believe it. Even in this moment of crisis, she showed no compassion, no offer to help, no words of comfort, just cold indifference. As I lay in that hospital bed, afraid for my baby's life, I felt something change inside me. The sadness turned into something harder, something I could not control. I realized I could never forgive them. The doctors managed to save our baby. I spent 2 months on bed rest. David took time off work to care for me. My mother moved in with us to help. We survived that difficult time together. But through it all, David's parents never visited. They never called to ask how I was. They sent no flowers, no card, nothing. In December, our daughter was born. We named her Sophie. She was perfect. She had David's brown eyes and my blonde hair. When I held her for the first time, I felt a love so powerful it hurt. David cried tears of joy. My parents came to the hospital immediately. They held Sophie and kissed her tiny hands. They said she was the most beautiful baby in the world. David called his parents from the hospital. He said, "Your granddaughter is here. She is healthy and beautiful. Do you want to come meet her?" There was a long pause. Then Margaret said, "We're very busy this week, David. Maybe some other time." David's face went white. He hung up the phone and left the room. I heard him crying in the hallway. That moment changed everything for me. I looked at my perfect, innocent daughter sleeping in my arms. I thought about how David's parents rejected her before they even met her. I thought about all the pain they had caused us. I felt something hard and cold settle in my heart. I made a decision. I would never let them hurt my daughter the way they hurt me and David. When David came back into the room, his eyes were red. He said, "I'm sorry, Emily. I'm so sorry for everything my parents have done to you." I took his hand and said, "You have nothing to apologize for. You are a wonderful man. This is their loss, not ours." But inside, I felt the wall around my heart grow higher. The months passed. Sophie grew and changed every day. She started smiling, then laughing, then trying to grab things. She was the light of our lives. My parents visited us every week. They helped with everything. They loved Sophie with their whole hearts. But David's parents never came. They never called to ask about their granddaughter. It was as if she did not exist. When Sophie was 6 months old, something unexpected happened. Margaret called. She said she wanted to visit and meet the baby. David was excited. He said, "See, they're coming around." I knew they would. But I felt only suspicion. Why now? Why after 6 months of silence? They came on a Saturday afternoon. I cleaned the apartment until everything was perfect. I dressed Sophie in her prettiest dress. I wanted them to see what they had been missing. When they arrived, Margaret walked in and barely looked at me. She did not apologize for missing the wedding or for staying away during my difficult pregnancy. She did not apologize for never meeting Sophie until now. She just walked to where Sophie was lying on her blanket. Margaret picked up Sophie without asking. She said, "She looks like David when he was a baby." She did not say Sophie was beautiful. She did not say she was sorry for missing 6 months of her life. Robert stood nearby, looking uncomfortable. He still barely spoke to me. I watched them with my daughter, and I felt my anger rise like a wave. These people had caused so much pain. They had missed our wedding. They had ignored me during my difficult pregnancy. They had not cared when the baby was in danger. They had waited 6 months to meet their only grandchild. And now they walked in as if nothing had happened. As if they had the right to hold my daughter. After they left, David was happy. He said, "That went well. Maybe things will get better now." But I could not feel happy. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed thinking about everything that had happened. I thought about the wedding day when David's side of the room was empty. I thought about lying in the hospital, terrified of losing my baby, while his mother said coldly, "I hope everything works out." I thought about all the times they made me feel small and worthless. I realized something that night. I could not forgive them. I did not want to forgive them. They had hurt the man I loved. They had rejected our daughter. Forgiveness felt like saying what they did was okay. And it was not okay. It would never be okay. The weeks passed and Margaret started calling more often. She wanted to visit Sophie. She wanted to take pictures with her. She started sending gifts. David was pleased. He said, "They're trying, Emily. We should give them a chance." But I saw something he did not see. They were not sorry. They never apologized. They just decided they wanted to be part of Sophie's life now, on their terms. One evening, Margaret called and asked if they could take Sophie for a weekend. David thought it was a wonderful idea. But I said no immediately. David was surprised. He said, "Why not? They're her grandparents." I said, "Where were they when I was bleeding in the hospital? Where were they when Sophie was born? They don't get to just walk into her life now." David and I had our first real fight that night. He said I was being unfair. He said everyone deserves a second chance. I said, "What about all the pain they caused you? Have you forgotten?" He said, "They're my parents, Emily. I can't cut them out of my life." I said, "And I can't pretend everything is fine when it's not." I lay awake that night, crying quietly. I loved David so much. I did not want to hurt him. But I could not let his parents hurt us again. I could not let them hurt Sophie. The anger and pain inside me felt like a heavy stone I could not put down. The next morning, David and I talked again. He said, "I understand you're hurt. I'm hurt too. But holding on to anger is only hurting us. My parents were wrong, but they're trying now. Can't we move forward?" I said, "David, they never apologized. They never said they were wrong. How can I forgive someone who isn't sorry?" David was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Maybe they don't know how to apologize. Maybe they're too proud. But Emily, forgiveness is not for them. It's for us. It's so we can be free from this pain." His words made me think, but I was not ready to listen. Months passed. The tension between us grew. David wanted his parents in our lives. I wanted to keep them away. Sophie was growing up, and I did not want her to know grandparents who had rejected her before she was born. Every time Margaret called, I felt my stomach tighten. Every time they visited, I was polite but cold. I could not be warm to them. I could not pretend. One day, my mother came to visit. She found me crying in the kitchen while Sophie was napping. She asked what was wrong, and I told her everything. I told her about my anger, about the fights with David, about my inability to forgive. She listened quietly. Then she said something that surprised me. "Emily, I understand your pain. What they did was wrong. But holding on to this anger is like drinking poison and expecting them to get sick. It's hurting you. It's hurting your marriage. You need to find a way to let it go, not for them, but for yourself and your family." I said, "But Mom, they never apologized. They don't deserve forgiveness." She said, "Forgiveness is not about what people deserve. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of pain. You can forgive them and still have boundaries. You can forgive them and still protect yourself. But you cannot carry this anger forever without it destroying you." Her words stayed with me for days. I started to see how the anger was affecting everything. I was short-tempered with David. I was anxious all the time. I was not enjoying motherhood the way I should. The anger was stealing my joy. I started thinking about David's parents differently. I tried to understand them. Maybe they were afraid of losing their son. Maybe they had dreams for him that did not include me. Maybe they were taught that love means marrying someone from the same background. It did not make what they did right, but it helped me see them as flawed people, not monsters. One evening, after putting Sophie to bed, I sat with David. I took his hand and said, "I'm sorry for being so angry. I'm sorry for making this harder on you." He said, "You don't have to apologize, Emily. You had every right to be angry." I said, "But the anger is hurting us. It's hurting our family. I don't want that anymore." We talked for hours that night. I told him I was trying to forgive his parents, but I needed time. I told him I needed them to understand that forgiveness did not mean forgetting what happened. David understood. He said, "We'll do this together. At your pace. No pressure." The next time Margaret called, I answered the phone. She wanted to visit Sophie. Instead of feeling angry, I felt tired. I said, "Margaret, before you come, I need to talk to you about something." She was silent. I continued, "You hurt me deeply. You rejected me and David. You were not there when we needed you. That pain does not just disappear." There was a long silence. Then, for the first time, I heard Margaret's voice shake. She said, I know I was wrong. I was afraid, Emily. I was afraid of losing my son. I thought he was making a mistake, but I was the one who made the mistake. I'm sorry." Tears ran down my face. It was not a perfect apology, but it was real. It was honest. I said, "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know." She said, "Can we start over? Can you give me a chance to be a better grandmother to Sophie and a better mother-in-law to you?" I thought about my mother's words. I thought about the weight I was carrying. I said, "Yes, but it will take time. Trust is not rebuilt in a day." She said, "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes." That conversation was the beginning of change. Margaret and Robert started coming to visit more carefully, more respectfully. They asked before picking up Sophie. They asked about my day. They brought food when I was tired. It was not perfect, but it was different. Slowly, very slowly, the wall around my heart began to crack. Forgiveness did not come all at once. It came in small moments. It came when Margaret helped me clean up after Sophie made a mess. It came when Robert asked about my writing and actually listened to my answer. It came when they remembered our anniversary. Each small act of kindness made forgiveness a little easier. 1 year after that phone conversation, we were all together for Sophie's 2nd birthday. I watched Margaret playing with Sophie in the garden. I watched David talking with his father, both of them laughing. I watched my parents sitting with Robert and Margaret, all of them smiling. And I felt something I had not felt in a long time. I felt peace. I realized that forgiveness does not mean the pain never happened. It does not mean what they did was okay. Forgiveness means choosing to release the anger that was poisoning my heart. It means choosing freedom over bitterness. It means choosing to build something new instead of staying trapped in the past. Today, my relationship with David's parents is not perfect. There are still difficult moments. There are still things that hurt. But we are trying. We are building something new. And most importantly, Sophie is growing up surrounded by love from all her grandparents. That is what matters most. I learned that forgiveness is not weakness. It is one of the hardest and bravest things we can do. It requires letting go of the right to be angry, even when that anger feels justified. It requires seeing people as more than their worst moments. It requires believing that people can change. My name is Emily. This is my story of pain and forgiveness. It is not a story with a perfect ending, but it is a story of hope. It is a story that taught me that holding on to anger hurts us more than it hurts anyone else. It taught me that love is stronger than pride, and that family, in all its imperfect forms, is worth fighting for. Every day, I choose forgiveness again. Some days it is easy. Some days it is hard. But every day, I am free from the heavy weight of bitterness. And that freedom is the greatest gift I could give myself, my daughter, and the man I love. Now that you've seen the whole story, we would really appreciate it if you rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your thoughts help us improve and make sure we bring you the kind of stories you truly enjoy.